Selectmen meeting, June 25th, 2024. It is 6 p.m. Can everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Do we have an approval?
I make a motion, we approve the agenda for June 25th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The public participation policy applies to all selectmen meetings. A copy of it is on the back of each agenda, posted outside this meeting room and on our website. We have a few minutes for the public hearing, which would be set for 6:05. I'm gonna take that opportunity of 4 minutes to go into new business and go into the ZBA fee waiver request. What this is, on Thursday, on the 20th of June at 9 a.m., we had a meeting with the public and the board itself on having a discussion and a vote on whether or not to rescind the decision on the earlier date for the denial for the application for special exception for this was the hospitality group on Cherry Valley Road. It was the consensus of the board and the vote of the board to reconsider and change the vote to allow them to come back and to, if they choose to. We felt as though that it was for us to hear them. They never spoke. And we never heard the general public speak. So we had denied it and no one was able to speak to it at the time. After speaking with council, we feel as though we erred. So we decided to extend the olive branch and go out and say to them, we voted amongst ourselves as a board of ZBA and unanimously decided to rescind our decision and to ask them if they do want to reapply, they can reapply, come to the town, and it would all be start the process all over again. But in order to do that, we told them we would ask the selectmen that to waive, and the cost would be no more up than $350 for a cost for a reapplication fee, if they choose to. We haven't heard yet if they're going to or not, but the option was there.
Do you need a vote or?
Yes.
Okay, and a motion?
Yes.
I make a motion that we waive the $335 fee to allow the hospitality.
The exact amount was a little, could be either or, so.
So
I
up
recommend
to-
it could be
up to
350.
Up to $350 for them to reapply the hospitality group for Cherry Valley Road.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Have they reapplied to your knowledge yet?
No.
No. It's just if they choose to.
Mhm.
Okay, it is 6:05, or pretty close. Okay, at this time, we open a public hearing, 6:05 for the public input and about culvert replacement project on Route 11 by New Hampshire DOT. Come on up, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's good to be back again to see you folks. You were here about a month ago, if you recall.
Yes.
Good to be back. So my name is David Smith. I'm the project manager for this improvement project to replace the Route 11 culvert, just a couple of miles north of here. Jim Bolt is here with me tonight. Chris Carucci, who was here with me last time, was not able to attend, but he developed the slideshow, refined the slideshow for us that will work from. I believe the folks in the audience have a copy of it as well, so you can follow along. And what we'll do is we'll give an overview of the improvements, just like we did last time. And what we're looking for and want to share with you folks is that background and the details, and seek some concurrence on the potential construction operation for the improvements there. So As a point of note, Jim, when the culvert did fail, Jim was on site. Jim was on site overseeing that repair. So Jim has firsthand knowledge of the operation that was done to repair it, and it'd be a good resource for us if we need to solicit any information from him as we progress. Again, Route 11 culvert replacement, we deem it as Alton 44456. That's simply our location, of course, and project number. As a background, the culvert is located about 700 feet north of Lakewood Drive and about 225 feet south of Keewaydin Drive. The project will be funded by a share of both federal funding and state funding, 80%, 20% rate for both those funding sources. We then get into and show you folks just a kind of a location map. Again, major locations there are Keewaydin Drive, Lakewood Drive to the south. Rand Hill Road, you can see in that location map, parallels it to the west, if you will. And of course, to the right or the northeast, north of Route 11 is, of course, the lake. Next slide is showing a look southbound along Route 11. On the left, you can see Keewaydin Drive. On the right, you can see Mount Major self-storage for milestones and locators. And in the foreground, we show just a red arrow there to kind of highlight the location of that culvert and as it crosses underneath Route 11. So as we know, Route 11 runs northwest or southeast along the southerly portion of Lake Winnipesaukee. It's a Tier 2 roadway, one of the higher classification of roadways. It's regionally significant. It carries a fair amount of traffic, and of course, it does vary between the summer and winter time frames. We'll see 10,000 vehicles per day in a summer time frame. On holiday weekends, it even peaks higher, about 15,000 vehicles per day. And then, as you folks know well, in the off season, we can see a half to a third of that peak volume at about 5,000 vehicles per day. So the existing culvert was 4 foot wide, 6 foot high, and 84 foot in total length. It carries a unnamed perennial stream under Route 11. The original stone section was built as part of the railroad corridor in the late 1800s, so it has a lot of age to it. It's a stone culvert. Both the verticals and the top are individual stone sections, and it had a natural bottom. Okay. So the next slides kind of give you some good appreciation of the culvert itself inside the culvert. And then you can see that the culvert was extended in 1948, about 8 feet on both sides. The concrete extensions have a concrete floor as opposed to, again, that natural bottom that's in the remainder of the culvert, the middle portion of it. It's a very deep culvert that leads into a lot of our challenges from a construction perspective, about almost 20 feet from the roadway surface down to the stream bed itself. This culvert, the outlet is about 500 feet upstream of the lake. I want to share that as well, because that's a concern of ours as we progress forward. So back on July 16th, 2023, the culvert failed during a storm event. Very, very high level of rain came through. The top of the existing culvert, the stone portion of the culvert fell down into the stream and the culvert bottom itself. And then it pulled, it allowed a lot of the overburden or roadway embankment to be pulled down into the stream and then failed in that fashion. You can see the failure. That's a good picture of the failure looking right down from the top. It did block the stream. It caused a large sinkhole. Sediment and debris was transported downstream. And it blocked stream flow and caused a large sink that Jim was on site to repair. Jim, how long did that take? Two days? Couple days to repair that.
Have that much to do with that one. I spent a lot more time on 140.
Okay. So that's a bit of the history of the failure. So as we do with all of our projects, we have a very heavy environmental effort, a big environmental lift that we have to procure and carry through all projects. We look at all aspects from natural and cultural environmental perspectives, archaeology, and so forth. 106, which is addresses the Natural Historic Preservation Act. And one aspect of that is that if anyone would like to be engaged on a project like this, they certainly have that right. And if there is anybody in the audience or in the public that would like to be involved, they can certainly contact or reach out to me, and we can have that discussion after the meeting. But that's an opportunity for folks to be involved in that project, in this project, if they so choose to. Some additional insight relative to the environmental resource coordination. We were happy to see that there's no protected shoreland, there's no FEMA floodplains, there's no prime wetlands, there's no contamination, there's no conservation lands or invasive species, and really priority resources. Of course, the stream does pass through there, and there are other resources like personal assets, land, and so forth that we certainly respect and appreciate. We did coordinate with our cultural and archaeological folks. The Division of Historical Resources support the project. There were no historic properties affected and no concerns for archaeology. From a threatened and endangered species perspective, northern long-eared bat is an endangered species that we are also always assessing on our projects, as well as plants. Tricolored bat's a new one as a potential species that we were alerted to, and monarch butterfly, and so we haven't identified any of those species on this project location. For water quality perspective, we're always sensitive to water quality. In this case, we're not increasing the paved area in any way, shape, or form. The roadway widths and lengths, of course, that you see out there will be the same as we put back once we repair the culvert. So we're not proposing any water quality treatment. On some larger projects where we increase the pavement, we have to put in a water quality basin, which requires typically acquisition of right of way and such. There's not that requirement here because, again, we're not increasing pavement. There are a few small non-jurisdictional wetland areas that we're working to get permitted through DES. And also working to address this Tier 3 stream crossing and meet all those requirements with folks like Fish and Game, DES, Army Corps of Engineers, and those folks that we coordinate with for the environmental perspective. Next slide is one that shows the Route 11 profile. So this is called a cross section that is right down the length of the road. So if you were driving the road and you had a cut of the road right down the center line, right the yellow line, that's what you're seeing on that slide. Wanted to show this because it shows the depth of the culvert, again, 19.5 to 20 feet in depth, and also gives some insight relative to the construction operation. The depth will likely require that the contractor have two platforms to kind of stage and access the culvert. Remove the existing, of course, and then put in the new box culvert. New box culvert will be precast concrete box culvert in, say, 8-foot sections or so, precast offsite, brought in and installed once the existing one is out of the current location. The stream profile on the next slide and page is one that shows you that it's very similar cross-sectional view. In this case, it's right along the stream bed. We felt this was important because we wanted to convey the challenge that we had with identifying the right size for the culvert itself. Chris, who was with me last time, looked at many different sizes, three or four different sizes here to meet other rules and regulations. We looked at flooding upstream and downstream, and this gives a good picture of an appreciation for that. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But one thing to note is, of course, Route 11 and the culvert below it on the right, and then Richardson Drive on the left. And so the numbers on the bottom are called stations we use in construction and design. So between, say, 4 + 50 and 4 and 5, you'll see that that's Richardson Drive. And there's a new culvert that was placed there just a few years ago that was a constraint of ours from a flow perspective, right? So we'll touch on more on that in a minute, but that gives a good appreciation for the roadway culvert and Richardson Drive culvert and the proximity of those two as they kind of drive what we're proposing to do here, at least for the design of the culvert itself. So to give you folks some understanding of the alternatives that we looked at. We looked at the do nothing alternative, which is kind of repair or leave the existing as it is. And we know that that's not really a sound solution, right? Because it's failed once, it's potential for that to fail again. And the right solution is for us to bring in a new culvert to avoid that catastrophic failure that we had in the past. So there were two alternatives to replace in kind. I'll just jump ahead real quick. The next one is to look at a hydraulically sized box culvert and then a compliant span. And the details on these are to replace in kind. In essence, replace the same width and height and length in essence as well. And that we looked at two different options, a road closed and a road open option. They do vary in cost and certainly operation and impacts to the local community, most specifically to travelers on Route 11, which we'll get into. So the replacing kind road closed has a minimum impact to wetlands, minimum tree clearing, shortest duration. We can be as short as 2.5 weeks. And we would complete this during the off season, that being September to November, when traffic volumes are reduced from the summer volumes that we talked about, those 10,000 vehicles per day and reaching 15,000 during some of the peak volumes. A road open option does cost about $500,000 to $750,000 more than the road closed option, primarily because of the cofferdams that are needed for that 20-foot cut to maintain a single lane of traffic in both directions. It does have an increase in wetlands. It does have an increased footprint because of the phased two-phase operation. It's a longer duration. It's about 3.5 months, which would start just before Labor Day, probably mid-August, and work through September, October, and November. And we're really constrained by paving at the end of the season. So we need to be paving by mid-November, or we lose that window to pave. So that's really what drives the time frame there. We then looked at a hydraulically sized box culvert. A larger culvert would convey more flow through it. That would be 9 foot wide, 6 foot high. At about a $1.5 million cost. We looked at that road closed option as well. It meant different things downstream. And I mentioned the culvert under Richardson Drive, and cut to the chase here. The hydraulically sized and the compliant span, which is a bridge that is really warranted by some of the DES rules and regulations, both would convey flows downstream that would compromise that recently reconstructed culvert under Richardson Drive, and would require the DOT to replace that culvert and pick up Richardson Drive. So those two solutions simply weren't feasible from our perspective. We have met with Ms. Richardson in the field, had some great discussions relative to the area and appreciated the culvert there. But in short, we didn't feel that those were really viable options. So as we proceed, you'll see that we're proposing to, and we've gotten buy-in from the environmental folks, to replace in kind, to maintain the same flows as exist today, so we're not compromising anything downstream. We are proposing to remove that downstream sediment. That was one of the things that we talked about with Ms. Richardson when we met with her. Of course, this stream being on her property, at least the downstream, certainly the downstream portion. There is a water line that goes right down the middle of the existing culvert. So we've been working with the town relative to relocation of that. The water department, I think we have got a good plan to relocate that out of the culvert for future. It won't be, it'll be moved out of the way prior to construction, and won't be in the middle of that culvert in the future. Okay. So the next slide just talks about the hydraulically compliant span bridges and the challenges that they pose, and the fact that simply we're not pursuing those as part of our solution. So it came down to, again, road closed and road open option for that replacing kind, 4 foot wide, 6 foot high. We've costed this out at about $1.25 million. We talked about the impacts to wetlands and tree clearing, both minimal compared to the road open option, and the time frame September to November. A 2.5 week time frame. In that period, we would give the contractor some time, guidance relative to the fact that they have to do it in a 2.5 week time frame, And they could choose to do it, say, after Labor Day, before Columbus Day, or after Columbus Day and before, say, middle of November. Okay. Again, with striving to have the road open and complete prior to mid-November at the least, because of that paving constraint. So the road open option would be open to two-way traffic with temporary signals. Be again 3.5-month time frame. There'd be preparatory work for clearing, guardrail removal, and those type of things prior to Labor Day. We would look to be beginning, say, just after Labor Day, September 8th of 2025, open to two-way traffic by mid-November. All right, so then that traffic signal would be in place for that 3+ month time frame. This is about a $500,000 to $750,000 additional cost to us, and that was one thing that we took very seriously as we looked at the options for the construction operations. We expect those temporary signals would cause a 5 to 10-minute delay along the corridor. They'd be sitting through a few signal phases. When you see those peak volumes, 10,000 vehicles per day, and peak volumes, say, in the morning 7 to 9, and certainly in the afternoon 4 to 6, we'd see those, and likely on the weekends, late August, early September, when there's still a fair amount of traffic in town. Again, just reinforcing the road closed, 2.5-week closure. One of the benefits, and Jim can speak to this with his construction experience if we'd like some insight there. One of the benefits of closing the roadway would be that it allows the contractor to stage right in the roadway, just as we did when we repaired the culvert. It's, as you folks know, it's a premium for land and open land for a contractor to stage and or to say lease if they need to. Road closure has that benefit as well. It allows for the staging right in the roadway, and they can bring their materials, that being their gravel material, their embankment material, as well as that precast concrete box culvert, bring it right in and set it on site that they can have it local and kind of pick and turn and drop it into the excavation for the replacement. So again, I talked about the timeframes, those 2.5-week timeframes, after Labor Day, before Columbus Day, after Columbus Day to mid-November for the contractor. We met back on April 8th with town staff, town administrator and staff, public works, fire chief and police chief. I had some good dialogue relative to what it means to the town for a road closure and road open solution. Given that we're in the end of 2025 when we do this, and there's a long time between now and then, the DOT would come back and give a public informational relative to the project if we do get support for the road closed option, so that folks should be aware of it. And we'll talk more about road closures and detours as we progress here as well. But to give those folks again an updated perspective of the operations, we would certainly commit to do that. So from a road closure perspective, we would look to use certainly the state route detours. Right out here, we would look to route traffic on Route 140. So going northbound on Route 11, we would look to detour them on Route 140. They would then go on to 107 and Route 3 and tie in at the north end of Route 11, about 10.5 miles of extra length for this detour. We would trailblaze that detour, meaning have signs at each turn and or location that a decision had to be made so that they were following the detour and getting to where they wanted to go. We would use portable changeable message signs, big message signs that will have, say, 2 messages on it that direct people to 140 and get them going on that path. We would also put up press releases and direct folks to the website. We'd have a public info meeting that I mentioned. And to do that, because here, so the critical locations, right, would be here at 140, the Rand Hill and Route 11 intersection on the south end, and then Rand Hill Road and Route 11 on the north end. We've got some slides that I'll touch to here in a moment relative to those specifics, but the next slide shows you the detour from Alton through Gilmanton, Belmont, and up to Laconia, tying back into Route 11. Now, certainly, as we progress again to the next slide, we expect local folks that know the Rand Hill Road location would use that as a detour. We wouldn't promote that. We would not promote that as a detour, but we would have that that roadway prepped for those folks that would use it because they know it, or get north and north of the Route 140 intersection here and use that. So you folks know that Rand Hill Road detour or location. It's about a 2.3 mile segment that parallels Route 11. It's 22 foot wide. So in essence, two 11-foot lanes each direction. DOT could certainly repaint the markings on Rand Hill Road, freshen those up so you have that separation, and that reinforces the traffic operation there. The south end of Rand Hill Road at Route 11, we would direct traffic straight ahead instead of bearing right on that sharp corner. We would have them continue straight onto Rand Hill Road. We would have a stop bar for those folks that are heading south on Route 11 that usually take that sharp left. We would have a stop bar there and alert them for a stop, so there's no conflicting movements at that location. And then we would also have some discussions with some property owners to see if we could enhance and just make sure that there's no conflicting vehicles with the new movements, right? So we may look to limit some parking at that corner and that sharp curve in that location. The northern location is a bit simpler. Folks that would be traveling south on Route 11 would simply be detoured onto Route 11 onto rather Rand Hill Road. We would have a type 3 barricades that in essence restrict traffic heading south on 11. Want to be clear that local road traffic, those folks that have a business and or live off of Lakewood, is it Weiderstrom or Widerstrom, depending upon how you want to call it out, they would certainly have that opportunity to get through to their residences. We would not restrict those folks. We could not restrict those folks. So those local folks would still have access in that capability. Let's see. So the next slide does show the Rand Hill detour. Again, we would not promote it, but we would be ready for those folks that would find their way to it. I've touched on some of the controls. Type 3 barricades, if you're familiar with what that is, it's a 3 leg barricade with orange and white kind of chevrons across it that would tend to redirect or limit stop traffic ideally from using, say, a side road. We could even put those on the side roads with some signage attached to those, local traffic only, to make sure that folks are not using those residents, those local roads as a cut through. So that's how we would envision, kind of controlling and limiting traffic to those local roads. Next slide is showing the 140 intersection out here. After our last meeting, Chris and I put some thought to how that would work, and I think some of you folks offered some insight relative to expectations there as well. And that's what the next two slides show. There's a little triangular piece out there that has 4 parking spots that really adjacent to it. And with that increase in left turn lanes or left turn movements onto Route 140, there'd be an increase in bypass traffic, right? For those folks that do have the need to go north, but not through, of course, when the road's closed. So in order to minimize that conflict and or to minimize the potential for parked vehicles and through vehicles, we can black out those 4 spots on a temporary basis, and we can put a no parking sign up there and control them in that fashion to allow those folks to slide by, so that you're not having those backups right here in town in front of in town hall and offices.
I think you might have to take 2 in front of a jewelry store.
Yeah, I was gonna say that because I came out there with a track trail the other day and I was like, oh, actually, this is
Yeah,
probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
I got here early and I walked up there.
Yeah, you gotta take that, yeah, because you're in that lane. If there's cars there, then you're in the other lane a lot.
I'm not 100% sure it's necessary to do anything because you're gonna have less traffic coming the other
Yeah,
way.
but even the
for
tractor
left
trailers going
turners
to like the
wait.
restaurants in the bay,
Yeah.
stuff like that, like all, there's
Yeah.
what, three more restaurants down that way. So you're gonna have some tractor trailers,
Yeah.
food trucks going
Yeah.
down. So you're gonna.
Yeah,
have-
I
and
mean, we
To me, it
certainly,
would make sense to barricade those,
Yeah.
block those off.
Sure.
It just makes sense.
sure,
Yeah,
we
but
can
we
do
could-
that as well.
we
Yeah.
could do it right up front, or we could just be prepared. Like, we could have everything to do it and watch and see if it's necessary or not, sort of up to you. I don't know how valuable those,
Yeah.
well, the 4 by the triangle and the 2 by the jewelry store are to
Off-season.
folks. And,
I think you'd have more concern with the jewelry store than Monument Square.
Right,
yeah,
right, right.
Yeah, so, so very good, good. So as we progress, the next 2 slides, but the next one is, they're both addressing or looking at the north, intersection, Rand Hill Road, Route 11. You're looking south on Route 11 and you can see Rand Hill Road tying in on your right. The next one shows an aerial view of it, and some of the controls. I mentioned that type 3 barricade that we would look to install to restrict that southbound through movement. And it may be 2 or 3 in a chicane type of a configuration to make sure that folks are getting the message that there's a Rand Hill Road detour. But yet that still allow the local traffic that does need to get through to get there. And of course, Rand Hill Road, that intersection is about 0.6 miles north of the culvert itself, of that potential closure location. The next 2 slides address the southerly Rand Hill Road and Route 11 intersection. It's going northbound. It's a hard right-hand turn, as we know, kind of parallels the lake and uses the lake as a boundary, and of course, the businesses. We would look to, again, put controls for the southbound movement to make sure those folks are stopped and acknowledge that stop movement, that they're not a through movement any longer. Folks that are going through would continue from Route 11 right up Rand Hill Road and continue along that path. As we know, Rand Hill Road is a 25-mile-an-hour posted roadway, a bit rural in nature, some good curvilinear aspects to it, some grades as well. I expect would tend to keep speeds down, at least as they progress along that route. The second one there simply shows the aerial overhead, reinforcing the stop on Route 11 southbound. Jim, I think you and Chris talked about a location for a message board back just prior to the lake bridge, or finding a spot there that would convey that message for those folks to travel straight through. And so that concludes our presentation for the Route 11 culvert replacement. Again, so one thing that we're seeking is, if you would find it appropriate, that you would concur or give us insight relative to our proposal to close Route 11 for that 2.5-week timeframe. The counter to that would be, again, a 3.5 month timeframe closure. Our perspective was to get in and get out and do it in pretty quick fashion. So with that, Jim, go ahead.
I think the other thing you gotta remember is the traffic volumes when you, once you put if you were to put temporary signals up to have alternating one way, when traffic backs up for 10 minutes, the people that get back a ways, they're just gonna go up Rand Hill anyway. I mean, they're not, right? I mean, that's what you would do. You're not gonna wait through 3 or 4 light cycles.
You're not wrong.
What's that?
You're not wrong.
Right, I mean, they're just gonna go anyway.
They're gonna go.
Yeah, so, I don't know, to me, we want to hear what everybody says and try to address concerns, but.
Yeah.
It's,
The road closure option's the best in your opinion?
yeah.
It is in our opinion.
'Cause I think even if you, like I say, even if you're
Yeah.
trying to do alternating one way,
Mhm.
you're still gonna get traffic on
Right,
right
yeah.
now. It's not.
So it is in the DOT's perspective. We're trying to be sensitive to the many different aspects. $500,000 to $750,000 cost difference means a significant amount to us. It's almost another culvert replacement project, or at least half of one. And so we're hoping that, the solutions that we brought to mitigate the local neighborhoods there is amenable to you folks, but we certainly want to hear what you have to offer and your perspective of the proposal.
Yeah, another thing I'll just point out is when we do close a road like that, it goes on Waze and Google Maps and so forth, so at least with the road closed options, that would be in for the GPS people and the, having the regional detour, I call it, in place will peel away some of the regional traffic, not necessarily somebody going to Mount Major parking lot, but the people that are going to Belmont, to Laconia. Because it's not that much of a difference to go 140 for those places.
For the road closed option, you listed two timeframes. Is that, who decides? I think we would probably prefer the later one, but I don't
Yeah,
know
we-
who makes that call.
We kind of left that because we need to do it during low flow by the environmental regulations for our permit. And so we would prefer to, I know what you're saying, but we kind of need to have that option in case Labor Day hits.
Mhm.
And then we get a whole bunch of rain.
Right.
And we can't jump in and do it. We can't manage that flow if we get a lot of rain. So we've got to look for the best weather opportunity and take advantage of that. So that's why it's kind of set up. We would word it that way in the contracts. So it's really, it'd be the contractor's choice to pick, once they've got the contract, they're gonna be looking at the weather and, that.
Yep. How much notice will we have for which week it is? The 2-week closure, I'm sorry. What would be the amount of notice? Is it 6 months or a
Probably.
month?
No,
I don't think
probably
it
more like
would
a
be
couple
that.
weeks.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
never know.
It
what
depend on the weather. It would
Because-
depend.
Right.
It's gonna be
I
a
just
short
didn't know how
notice. I
close it
see
was.
that.
I just didn't know
Right.
how close it was.
It's not gonna
Yeah.
be a long notice.
No.
Depending on the weather, but you try to plan for as early as you can to the September, November,
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
after
you're
Labor
gonna-
Day as you
If the
can.
September one, the weather looks good, you're gonna take that.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you don't want to take a chance on waiting for the second one and then
Mhm.
you don't have it, because then you.
It's gonna assume that all your public notifications and PR are gonna go out anyway, well in advance of that, saying the fall, of 25, or
Right.
this is gonna happen.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and one thing to be aware of as well, so Jim works for our construction bureau, right? So Jim oversees either projects directly or he has crews working, people working for him. And we will have a person responsible for that oversight of this replacement. And so that would be the DOT's liaison to the town, and we would be in contact with you folks.
Mhm.
Just so that you're aware of what is happening and when it's happening, when that closure would be. So that there's, everyone is as much aware in advance as possible.
You've obviously done your homework on this and really researched everything carefully and have a couple of good plans here.
I think the road closed one's the best option.
Yeah, I think so. But at this point, I'd like to open it up to public input. If anybody would like to ask questions, if one of you would like to stay up here and answer some questions. So we'll open it up to anyone that would like to come up and ask the DOT questions. Please come up.
I'll stay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Sure. And then if she wants to sit right here with you, or if one of you wants to stay in, you can answer questions.
With you.
But come right on up and introduce yourself, sit down here and talk into the mic. There you go. If you have to share a mic, that's okay.
It's good to see you. You too. Good to see you. Hi, Jim. I'm Donna Richardson. I've spoken with most of you before, and I've had the occasion to meet Dave and talk somewhat extensively about the project. And Jim, you and I met on site. You might not remember it because it was chaos. It wasn't even organized chaos. It was just chaos. My first question comes to both the state and the town. Here we are today with the opportunity for public input, and there was absolutely no signage or notice in any of the Keewaydin area that tonight's meeting was going to address this. That group of people in our community will be the most impacted by what happens with road closure. They're going to be impacted not only by road closure, but by the seasonal water lines. Not a lot of the homes in the Keewaydin actually have wells. So the big question right now is, You've talked about we're gonna relocate the water line, but nobody knows where it's going to go
Mhm.
or how that's going to impact the seasonal water in that part of the community.
Right.
Is there some thought on that?
Yes, yes. So we've been in coordination with the Alton Water Department, and from my permanent perspective, it would be relocated out from the culvert itself and put to the south side in its own carrying pipe, so that it will be protected under the roadway in the future. And from a timing perspective, we understand that it was by October 15th that it
Typically.
typically closes down. If the contractor was to choose that window, say in September, they would have to perpetuate the water through that line during construction.
Okay, so we would have continuation of
Yes.
water flow with whatever interruptions based on what the construction schedule is.
Absolutely.
It would be an
Yes.
hour or two at any given day
When we-
Yes.
because we have to move the line, shut it off, move
Right.
equipment.
Yes.
When you talk with the water company.
Right,
Yeah, they basically what you're gonna do is trench across the road.
Right.
A distance away from the culvert,
Yeah.
put a sleeve in.
Yeah.
So that would be done ahead, but the
Yeah.
water's still running the way it is today.
right.
And then they would push a pipe through the sleeve and get it set up, ready to go, and then there would be a brief time that they closed it.
Right.
Existing one, shut it off and reconnected it to the new line.
So when we say south of the culvert, how far south? Because that's going to require that it changes everything that happens on the downstream part of the culvert.
Yeah.
The line currently runs in the stream bed.
Yes,
So where will it go?
just about 50 feet downstream from the existing culvert location, so very close proximity.
So 50 feet puts it well into my property. And where does it go after that?
Yep, so it'll go back in parallel the stream.
They run along. the
So it'll
slope.
come back here and then go this way and then back into the stream?
Yep.
Okay, and so early phase construction would
Yep.
put the pipe in here
Yes,
so that it gets relocated back here to come,
probably closer to the inlet itself, but
Okay.
keep in mind, there will be open excavation
right,
really for us to excavate and remove that existing culvert.
Right.
So what you see in gray are the excavation limits. And so I expect the relocated water line probably to be tapped into about the limit of the gray.
okay,
And then with 50 feet downstream, parallel that existing location. There was a good cross section of this, of the roadway itself, but that would kind of clarify things, but 50 feet downstream and then swing in. This will be a flexible pipe, so it can swing
that was
back
gonna be
in
my next thing. So we're
pretty,
gonna
pretty easily,
would
yeah.
use the same, roughly the same 2 to 3 inch diameter flex
Yes.
on both sides.
Yep.
So that seasonally it could be removed there, blown out through there,
Yes.
just like the valves
Yep.
farther down are.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Thank
if
you.
look Now you can see the way it runs on the
Yes.
side of the island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over here.
Mhm.
It'll just run back along that.
Yep.
Cleanup and abatement issues, from 2 questions. One, you mentioned in a portion that the lake is approximately 500 feet downstream. Is that the linear measurement or is that the stream measurement?
I don't know, Chris,
Okay.
Chris gave that, the 500 feet, I don't know if it's the curvilinear length or a direct shot downstream.
I'm gonna guess it's a direct shot.
Okay.
Just because of what
Yep.
my property tax bill is and
Sure.
what those measurements are.
Okay,
So my question is, how far downstream from the culvert on 11 towards the lake is cleanup going to go? The vast majority of the debris is no longer between the 2 culverts. The vast majority of it is now below where our family culvert is towards the lake.
Yeah.
And that's not good for any of us.
so when we met in the field, it was back last fall, right? So
Correct.
we talked about the DOT, the DOT has a lot of culverts that have failed because of storms
Yep.
recently. As a matter of practice, the DOT has not in the past even cleaned up downstream at all.
Mhm.
It's a DOT policy. We worked with Donna, appreciated her request to do something there because there was a lot of sediment on your property, right? You weren't concerned, as I recall, so much with the debris in the stream, but on the top, or was it vice versa?
More of it is on the top,
Yeah.
and my concern is another big storm will bring it back in.
Yeah.
Whatever was already in the stream
Yeah.
has already moved to the lake. So my concern is the next big event,
Yeah.
which fortunately we haven't had, despite how much rain we've had this year. Fortunately, it has not been a big event, but if any of you are interested, you're certainly welcome to come over to the property, but where the culvert on 11 collapsed, going downstream, if you take the center line of the stream all the way to our culvert, the vast majority of it went almost 30 feet in from the center line of the stream up onto our property and dumped a ton of debris. On some levels, it's okay because nature will take care of it. The bigger concern though is how much of that is going to end up in the lake. There are chunks of tar from the road, excuse me, from the roadway surface that are still embedded there. I'm more concerned about that because tar will leach in the environment.
So we've worked with our DES folks and environmental folks in our DOT, and we committed at least today, at this point, to remove the sediment, and we've kind of tried to highlight it here with
Mhm.
that cut line,
Okay.
the T line there, if you
Yep,
will.
yep.
And imply that's the limit of our sediment removal.
Okay.
So that's on the, say, the high side of the stream, and then even in the stream as well, being sensitive to that. And that'd be between the outlet and your culvert
Right.
on Richardson Drive.
Okay. We do have the monarch butterflies. They are more
Okay.
than plentiful right now.
Okay,
I'll bring you some pictures. So
Okay.
keep them on your sheet there.
okay.
School buses. What access are we providing to them, not only through Lakewood, but through Keewaydin? We have 3 year-round residents that I'm currently aware of that need the school bus.
Mhm.
How's that gonna go?
Yeah.
Is that gonna have to take Rand Hill? Is that gonna have to, and,
I follow the school bus on Rankill,
okay,
so I wondered what their routes are.
okay, so the one that currently drops off the Prospect Mountain kids comes straight down 11 because there are kids at Lakewood, Grammy's Way, and Keewaydin. And I believe there are 3 currently getting on and off in Keewaydin. I don't know about the elementary route.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's a concern.
Yeah, well, we haven't had any discussions with the municipality, with the town relative to that yet, but we certainly can do that. I would expect that they would use the local road detour,
Mhm.
either Rand Hill Road, or if there's even a better one, I expect the local folks in, say, Lakewood and those similar type residence areas would not be opposed to a school bus. I would expect, I don't want to speak for them,
Mhm.
but that they would be amenable to that in the 2.5 week timeframe.
I just want it to be on somebody's radar.
Yep,
Because
yep.
I didn't hear it in any of
Oh,
the
that's good.
presentation.
Fair enough. Sure,
And we talked about 18-wheelers
Sure.
and delivery traffic, but we haven't talked about our kids.
sure, sure.
And that needs, in my opinion, that needs to be somewhere on the list because it may change the timing for them getting to and from school. It may change the school timing for after-school activities.
Yep.
It may change when we need perhaps extra police coverage at the corner of Rand Hill and 11, not necessarily at 11 near the post office, but on the north side where the 2 meet.
Mhm.
The 2-stage for the contractors to get down in, I forget which slide that is,
Mhm.
but the distance that comes to Keewaydin, when they're staging there, how's that gonna impact our access to getting in and out of there? Will the north or southbound side remain open literally to Keewaydin only? How did that get staged so that we can still have ingress egress to that primary entrance?
We will not block access to Keewaydin or any businesses.
Good,
Okay.
but how do we control traffic flow there? If you need
Yep.
1 lane to
Yep.
stage everything, how do we control traffic flow inbound, outbound between Keewaydin and Rand Hill?
So I expect that the staging operations would be fairly close proximity to the culvert itself, say a few hundred feet. Again, the photo showed, sand, gravel and embankment piles as well. I expect other things to be the precast concrete barrier. We would make sure that they're on one side of the road or the other. or either within the limits of, say, Key Waden Drive and or Mount Major Self-Storage, such that there's no impact to that access for you folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very selfishly speaking, I'm going to ask the town to start thinking about how we might help some of the homeowners who are also boat owners, who are seasonal and they store their boats on their property. If they're leaving when the seasonal water goes off and this project is going on, they're not going to be able to get their boat in there. Some of the boats and trailers are rather substantive in size, and trying to make some of those turns with the construction barriers and stuff with people who are not professional drivers, as you've all known when you see them on the boat ramp, we might need to have a temporary storage for that one winter that can be accessed by that very finite group of people. I'm not sure how we do it. I'm not sure where we do it.
Are you talking about they can't go from the far Rand Hill side, the Guilford side? Are you saying that they wouldn't be able to drive their boat trailers into Key Waden from that side?
Depending on what the staging looks like, that would be exactly what I'm saying, Nick.
If there's one entire lane open, you don't think they'd be able to drive down that one side lane?
I have watched people on our boat ramps here in town, and that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not going to call out individuals, but
I think they can figure it out.
Well,
I would like to.
I would think they can figure it out.
I would
Well-
like to think so, Paul, but we're talking about,
Well, we're talking for, if we choose to go with the short route, and not a long period of time.
let us do this as well. So,
You're talking 2.5 weeks.
yeah, we can,
understood.
It's not like 6 months. I'm
in our
sorry.
plans, no, that's fine, no, it's fine. We can identify the staging areas that the contractors will be limited to. Is that a fair?
We're gonna leave access big enough for fire.
Yeah.
Right.
Have to, yeah.
You're gonna have to, yes.
Yeah.
They should be-
Okay.
So,
There's a fine line there. If somebody, if they can't manipulate themselves in and out of there with their boat, and you can get a fire truck in and out of there with all apparatus, they shouldn't be driving.
100% agreement, but that's not in the state rules.
we will look to specifically identify areas where contractors can stage and give them some constraints relative to
Okay.
that. Being respectful of accesses, boat maneuvers and so forth.
Okay.
All right.
Last question from me, so that anybody else can get a turn too. How far in are we looking here from center line of the road? How far in this way into our family property are we
Property.
talking about? And how many of those trees are we talking about?
Yep. So the area that is in gray, that is
Mhm.
on your property
Mhm.
is approximately, don't judge me. I'm gonna do some finger measuring here, okay? Not true engineering measuring here, but I don't,
use my
I
thumbnails.
don't have my engineering scale with me, but it's about, so
So center line of the road is roughly
Station-
this line.
yeah, station, we'll do this. Station 108 or
Yep.
108 to 109 is 100 feet.
Okay.
Okay, so you can use that as a benchmark, or the intermediate hash mark, that's 50 feet.
Yep.
Okay, so this will be about 50 feet in length.
Yep.
And it's not an exact rectangle, but I would say it's about 40 feet in depth, so onto your property. Now, that's the clearing, Donna.
Right.
And of course, then the sediment removal area, we will not be clearing in that area, but getting in there with smaller machinery and getting that out of there. So if we're saying 50 by 40, that's about 2,000 square feet. But what we will do,
But what we're looking at in
Yep.
this length and in this context is, because our family property line is right here. So I'm looking at roughly the entirety of my back lot is going to be part of the construction phase. That above 11.
your property line is, yeah, I guess we don't show it on here, do we?
Yeah.
But it's somewhere in that vicinity, correct?
Yeah.
I know the whole
The
stream.
property line
Okay.
is right here, because that's the edge of the stream coming out that way.
Yep,
And then it comes all the way over. I'm assuming this
Yeah,
is Eunice.
this is where you get your boat in, right?
Oh, no,
No?
but so
Okay.
that is, so yeah, we are talking about the entirety of my back.
Yeah. So only this portion, again, only the portion in gray is the
Yep.
clearing limit. So, and only, so that portion is on your property. Of course, this is on your frontage, absolutely. And this, so this is the clearing area.
Yep,
And what we're doing now, Chris is developing plans that will allow us to come out and to share the impacts with you, both the clearing area. There's probably some construction easements that he has as well that
Mhm.
look something like this.
mhm,
And the rights and opportunity to get in and remove that sediment here. Those will all be identified in a separate plan, Donna,
Okay.
that we will share with you. And then we'll, of course, we'll have to compensate for the rights of access for the sediment clean area, as well as the clearing area and any slope limits that we may have.
excellent,
Okay?
excellent.
So that you'll have a call from me or a person from our right-of-way group. I'll call you to kind of preface that meeting, but that's what we'll
Yeah,
do.
no, that's not a problem. Thank
Okay.
you. One, last teeny thought, perhaps we look at in terms of, controlling local traffic flow. Perhaps as a temporary, we create placards that will go in our vehicle windows. And that could help preventing a whole bunch of U-turns over near Lakewood. If, in order to come that direction from the town or to come from Rand Hill, if you had to have a temporary placard in your car, it may help reduce some of the U-turn problems.
And I don't think anybody would be there to monitor that, who has them in their cars. Are you talking about for the construction workers, so them? to
Talking
be able
about
to
the
see?
residents, right?
Residents.
The
yeah.
residents are
Residents
going
to
in.
have it, I get that.
Right,
Who
he's
would
talking,
monitor
they know right away that it's a resident coming in.
the construction
Into,
company. I
the
got you.
construction company
Yeah,
will be able to
that was my
recognize, oh, this car, they're going in, and that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
And
That,
that way,
that'll
they're
make
not-
it clear.
exactly, that way they're not telling somebody, you gotta turn around.
Right.
And now we've got more traffic going up through Lakewood.
They have something on their windshield that they clearly can see the construction workers, this person lives in Key Waden, even if that's all it said, Key Waden.
Exactly.
Or, you know,
Specific color, something.
with a color, they'll
Yeah.
know automatically that they belong there and it's not someone else.
Exactly.
It's a good thought.
It has the opportunity to help reduce
Yeah.
extra traffic going up through Lakewood. We may not mind school buses going
Sure.
through, but you know,
Yeah.
30 other cars
Yeah, it
every
would,
10 minutes.
it would warrant somebody there to kind of screen, as Nicholas said. But it certainly would be I think well received.
Food for thought, just like the
yeah,
school bus thing,
yeah.
just food for thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
very
you.
good.
Thank you very much for your time. Anyone else, any questions or comments? Come on up, introduce yourself, sit down up here. Come on up.
Just concerned over the sediment that's gone into the lake as a result of this. I abut the brook as it enters the lake. Not affected by as much as Miss Richardson, but equally affected on the lake end. That there's 6 to 8 inches of silt as you step into the lake now as a result of this and continuous flow of the brook. And I'm a little disappointed to hear that nothing was mentioned of taking that. You're taking an area and excluding residual effects that the brook caused because of this disaster.
Yes, the concept that we DOT work by, because we deal with this all the time, not just.
Could you speak in the mic a little bit better, please? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, the concept that DOT kind of lives by for this, and we deal with this all the time on our maintenance side. Not just box culverts, but even regular culverts, because, you know, continuously these brooks move material, sediment, sticks, leaves and whatnot. And, you know, the sediment, the sticks, the leaves, or anything, you know, they come from one side, they get through, and then they keep going down the other side. And, you know, the concept is, okay, we're maintaining the roads with gas tax money. So Mother Nature decides to have a really bad storm and move stuff from here down to there. Is it a highway maintenance issue to maintain the brooks? You know, and that's kind of the concept. And it's hard sometimes to draw the line, like where is the line? This very same storm, for instance, up in Madison on 113, a gentleman at the bottom of the hill lost a septic system, and he actually lost his septic system a month before during the storm. The road washed out twice, took his septic system out twice, and he's very close to the road. And, you know, that whole concept was discussed, you know, at a higher level than mine, of course, but, and that's sort of the logic, you know, if DOT.
Do you relay
Right.
to DES?
Yeah. We have.
Involved in this?
We've conveyed this to DOT, and that there are other groups out there. When Donna and I and Chris and Rona met, right, we shared other opportunities. There are other conservation groups that have provided funding for lake cleanup. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. That's not my exact wheelhouse relative to cleanup and so forth, but I can research our notes and have somebody give you some insight relative to those other groups that could be better than the DOT relative to the cleanup perspective of that of the lake.
I did notice a week or two ago that one of my neighbors had somebody in the water with some kind of sonar device measuring the silt down to the base and relaying it to somebody on shore at 30 feet. I have 6 inches, I have 8 inches. And gradual. I don't think he was from the straight state, but I can't imagine that a private individual would be able to just go out and start moving silts on the water.
Right, you'd have to get permits and
Yeah.
all of that.
That was the extent of my question. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions or comments?
Well, I got a quick question. You mentioned earlier that you'd consulted with DES and then you kind of qualified it as within your department, DES. Yeah, I know they're two separate entities, but I didn't know if you had only consulted with a DES expert within the DOT as opposed to actually going to DES.
Right, yep. We have a Bureau of Environment. It's embedded within the DOT. They're state employees, they're DOT employees. They are our liaison between all the resource agencies, that being natural resources, cultural resources, DES, Army Corps, and so forth. We coordinated through our Bureau of Environment to DES directly. So we have had that outreach, yes, with DES specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question is when you created your estimates, how much did you apply toward the cleanup effort?
So the cleanup effort in the big picture of things with mobilization, the precast box culvert, the clearing and so forth, guardrail pavements, it's a small cost for that cleanup downstream. And what we talked about with Ms. Richardson was how we would do that, right? So we would have, we wouldn't be committing any clearing in the cleanup, the sediment cleanup area. We'd have probably some employees, some contract workers that have a shovel and a rake, you know, collecting that, putting it in a smaller wheelbarrows and or hand trucks like that would be able to get in and get out of there, maneuver around the trees. It's not very densely wooded in there, but there are some decent growth that would prohibit any larger excavators from getting in there. And so that's how we talked about removing that sediment that was both in the stream and on embankment, both say downstream between the outlet and the Richardson culvert.
Right, very labor intensive process. Having gone through it myself, I've had a half a dozen laborers work for 3 weeks with buckets in the woods to clean up a spill. I'm trying to figure out, trying to gauge when you put your budget together, you know, did you put $200 to this? Did you put 20 grand to it? Did you put 50 grand?
Yeah, I expect the cost of that, and I don't have the estimate in front of me. Chris would be able to rattle it off, I'm sure. I would expect it would be $2,500 to $7,500 for laborers to get in there and to do that work. Jim, does that sound about right to you?
I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked at it and tried to estimate
Yeah.
it, but My gut tells me it's a few days work.
Yeah.
For 3, 4 laborers.
Right.
Buckets and wheelbarrows.
Right.
It's not as extensive as, sounds like what you've done.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would
Sure.
the Public Works Director or anyone like to have any questions or any comments? All set? Okay. We're about to deliberate on that and talk about that a little bit. Yes. You want to make any comments or come up? Come on up, Kelly.
Hey there, Kelly Sullivan. I know that this would be a huge inconvenience for the town in general to do this, and especially for the residents that live in that immediate area. That being said, I think having gone through the ordeal of the storm that we went through and having that section of the road shut down for as long as it was, it would behoove us to probably shut the road down to just get it done. People are kind of used to it now. They've already done it. Yes, it's inconvenient, but 3.5 months of detail and, you'll still get your traffic and everything else. And just for construction, anybody that works in construction, obviously land is a premium to try to store your equipment and supplies. It's a hindrance. So I do think the closing of the road would be better. I am a little concerned about the intersection at Monument Square when we close down those parking spaces, which is fine, because I often, being in equipment, I often stop and let tractor trailers come out of 140 because they do need to take up
Yeah.
both lanes of that road to make that turn. But I would think people would be smart enough to not try to enter through Monument Square on that other side by the jewelry shop, but people, I mean, it's a small area, very clustery, and people kind of just do what they want. So I am just a little concerned with around that area at 140 Town Hall. People live there, businesses, so just didn't know how we would manage on the other side of Main Street, directly in front of Town Hall, and just that whole section.
Well, we can, as we advance those plans and they become more contractor ready to be bid upon, we can share those with Scott and anyone else in the town for their insight. You folks know this area certainly better than we do. Jim knows the area well. We rely on Jim quite a bit from construction operation perspective. But we can share those layouts and the signage locations with folks in town so that we're getting it right. Right? We want to get it right. We need to get it right so that it runs as smoothly as possible. As we advance those plans, we can share those with the town.
And it's
staff.
difficult, and I don't like to say takeaway parking downtown, because parking downtown is at a very premium on the best day.
Can you
It's a-
clarify where you're talking about? Because we're talking about the outside of Monument
so
Square,
I'm
not
talk-
the inside.
I'm talking about people coming from the inside, so,
Okay.
so also, if you're coming out of 140.
Yep.
Yep, so
Thank
if you're
you.
coming out of 140, we're
Yep.
gonna shut down those 4 sections,
Just
so. Right, I'm talking about the people coming in and out of here.
right, okay.
Okay, and then we shut down these sections, and
Yep.
there's also parking right here
Yes.
with a crosswalk.
Right.
Okay, so for people that are gonna circumvent and go around, we now have 2 parking spaces right here, which are pretty much right at the intersection as well. So I am concerned with, 1, people trying to in and out here, but 2, the people that now have that freedom to go and pass by. We have these open, and then we have 2 parking spaces right here directly, almost, I mean, they're like right
I
there.
think they had talked about possibly, those are in front of the jewelry. store,
Okay, I must,
possibly
yes, I didn't
closing
hear
those.
that.
Yeah,
I just heard the 4.
Possibly those as well.
possibly, yeah.
Okay,
It's
I
all
didn't
gonna be
hear that.
contingent on,
Right,
how it works out.
yep, no, and I didn't hear that. I just heard the 4, and I just
Right.
know like those.
Those also.
And again, I don't like to say takeaway parking, but obviously safety has to be the priority,
I
right?
we don't want to block anything off going into Monument Square
Right.
on the town hall side, in the stores and the businesses, and they
Right,
have to
no,
remain
obviously-
free.
Obviously, we want to try to be less inconvenient for everybody down there, right? And that's why I don't want to take away any more parking, but again, it's the safety. So I didn't hear that. And I just, driving through the downtown corridor as much as I do, people go around there all the time anyway, right? And it's always like, I personally never go around anybody because it's just too small, the crosswalk there. I mean, it's just,
Too much going on.
just wait 2 minutes and then you can just go by. But because I do drive through there, it is a concern. So I just wanted to bring that up.
One aspect, if we have no parking in those 4 spaces, people coming out from the businesses will be able to see better without a car there in the way.
Yes.
You'll be able to see
That's true.
coming out into traffic, taking a left-hand turn,
Yeah.
going south.
So, and that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Can I ask you?
Any other
ask you
public input? Okay,
two quick questions, if I could, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
yes.
Do you require or will you require any approvals from any other agencies that you'd have any trouble getting? Or are you all set that way?
Yes, we're progressing forward. We're working through, the environmental permits and approvals are really the biggest component.
Yep.
As I mentioned earlier, we'll be working to address the right-of-way impacts. There's 3 property owners that are there, 2 downstream and 1 upstream. I've contacted 2 of the 3 already. In the big picture, certainly not minimizing right-of-way impacts, but in the bigger picture of, from a right-of-way perspective, it's easements and short-term impacts that we'd be working to compensate and negotiate with the property owners.
And for the inevitable individual that ignores all the signs and warnings and comes up to the barriers, will there be a provision for a safe U-turn?
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about. We'll identify that U-turn capability there.
No, not a big
Yeah.
hole.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's already worked. This isn't the first time we've done this, so I think it's.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, when you close the road like that, the whole environment is different because you don't have through traffic anymore. It's, so if somebody gets up there and says, oh dear, it's not like they've got 10 cars behind them going by, the turning around parts. Not a big issue.
Okay.
All right. Any further comments from, anything else you'd like to add as far as the DOT? And
No, we're again, happy to be back, and just
I'm
seeking
glad you're back.
hopefully support for the road
Mhm.
closure opportunity, and we'll
All right.
willingly hear what you have to offer. Yeah.
Thank you. I, for one, I'm gonna speak up and say, I've been looking at, this is very well presented, well thought out. We had some other comments of things that, will help as well. I personally think that the replacement in kind road closure for the shortest duration of 2.5 weeks, to try to complete during the off season, September to November, would be the way to go, in my opinion.
I agree.
I'd
I
like
think
to
the
get some
road's
more input
closed.
from
Yep,
anybody
I
else.
think the road closed option is what I agree with too.
Yes, yep.
I agree.
Okay, then I'll put that in a motion. My motion is to replace in kind for the shortest duration of 2.5 weeks in the off-season, September to November.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Well, thank you. We'll have more coordination outreach. Again, we'll share some plans for those detailed aspects, parking, removal of parking spots and so forth. And then again, commit to having that public informational next summer
Mhm.
to brief folks. One thing we didn't talk about was, well, we did previously was we can certainly work to restripe the yellow lines
Yes.
on Rand Hill Road. We also talked with Scott relative to fog lines, white lines on
Mhm.
there. Do you folks think that that would help or not? Because what we talked about last time was if we do
During the
stripe it,
day.
you folks may be committed in the long
as we,
term to do
as we
that.
get closer to the date, maybe we can make that decision
Sure.
then at that point. At this time, we're talking a year away.
We are.
So I think it'll give us a little time to think about it and maybe talk to DPW
Sure.
and see what would make the most sense for the yellow line and the white lines. And we have some time to think about that.
We do. And we, relative to other aspects, we talked about prices for a certain aspect. Striping is relatively inexpensive piece of the overall operation there. So we would certainly put quantities in there and have the contractor bid it And if we don't need them, we would simply not have them do that. So we can take that approach, but we'll have that dialogue as we progress.
Here, in like DOT, we don't start fog lines on unnumbered roads.
That road's pretty narrow as it is to have white lines on.
Yeah, it sure is.
It is, it is.
Through the unnumbered roads, because they're generally the narrowest curves, and we find that people go fast because they feel confident. So that's just the logic we use.
I think
That's
fresh,
why we
fresh
don't-
yellow lines makes a lot of sense, you know, right before the start of the shutdown period.
But no white, I wouldn't do white lines.
No, I don't see a lot of sense in it.
Absolutely with the yellow, and we could probably even do it before and after as a first order of business, and then as a final freshen up.
All right.
You could do some other roads.
As long as you're out.
All right.
All right, thank you
Very
very
good.
much for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
That concludes our public hearing for the culvert replacement project from DOT. I make a motion to convene as a Board of Selectmen's meeting at 7:15, starting with appointments.
Second.
Okay, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, I open now for public input for agenda items. If anyone has to, any comment? Okay, we'll close it to public input. No appointments this evening, other than DOT. New business, we already had new business with ZBA fee waiver. So we'll go right to old business. Daniel Silva, non-public request, use of facilities.
Hey, Dan.
What's up, man? Hi, so I'm Dan Silva. Last time we were here, there was questions about not in good standing with the state.
Mhm.
You know, that was we hired a management company to take care of all that stuff, and they dropped the ball on us, but now I believe we are in good standings. And you also asked for an insurance policy
Mhm.
paid out to the state, out to the town of Alton, and I have that also with me.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much.
I also brought the annual report if you need it.
Okay, this was 60. Okay. Let's pass that on down the line.
This is going to be.
Right, that's why I got a survey. It looks like there are a few concerns as far as timing as to when you can have your meetings and when you can't have. After looking at comments from the Parks and Recreation Director, Alton Bay Community Center is not available Mondays, September 9th to December 30th, and is not available on Tuesdays, Wednesdays from 5 to 9. I think you were looking for last Wednesday of each month from 6:30 to 8:30.
Yes. And we also have a annual meeting in September,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so it's not like we need the building all the time, you know, we just have to have a building to have our annual meetings because, you know, I'm pretty content with doing Zoom meetings. It's easier, you know, so that way, you know, like what people say, you just hit a mute button and it's done, you know, like,
Okay.
but
So if you do what, just an annual meeting, you're talking about once a year? Or are you talking,
well, according to the ROC, we have to have a place where we can have the meetings in a public spot,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? But,
right?
you know, if we can have our meetings, if the spot's open for the last Wednesday of the month, yeah, we will take that spot, you know what I'm saying?
Well, we
But if
don't
it's
have
not-
it. That's what I'm saying. The Wednesdays, all Wednesdays, from 5 to 9 are not available. Not at the Alton Bay Community Center. If you look at your sheet, it's not available on those dates.
Okay,
It's not available Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 5 to 9. I know you're asking for a Wednesday. It's not available on Thursdays from 12:30 to 3. Now through October. Also not available July 25th. And there's certain dates there, August 9th, 10th, 11th. You got to look at those dates and see if there's some way that you could have a meeting
opposite of any of these dates if we were to choose to do so.
Well, if it makes it easier, then we just need a place to have our, then we'll just find a place to have our annual meeting. You know, because like I said, I'm pretty content with having Zoom meetings, you know, but
Mhm.
they're requesting that.
They're
everybody-
requesting you have it.
For an annual meeting,
Mhm.
you know, because everybody has to be there, you know.
What dates you thinking for the annual one? Did you have one in mind?
Yeah.
What day?
Last Wednesday in September.
Oh, and I didn't hear that part last Wednesday. in
Last
September.
Wednesday. There's no other day that's possible?
Now, they seem to put us on a, you know, kind of a rock solid schedule there.
You know, unfortunately, most,
Even if it's a different building. Like
well, we got
can-
Pearson Road Community Center is not available Thursdays at 5 to 8. Um,
And that's the September 11th,
Mhm.
18th and 25th.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Just to throw a suggestion if the board so wishes. One way you could resolve this, if you chose to go in that direction, is they're really requesting a waiver of the fee for a nonprofit. And then as part of your motion, you could just direct them that the time and the date be coordinated with the Parks and Rec director.
no, that'd make it, that'd make it a lot easier.
And then instead of
Yeah.
trying to put a
Yeah.
date. on
Yeah,
it right
okay,
now,
all right.
then-
I was,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to see, but
Yeah.
you are here for the waiver of fees.
Yeah, so they have it.
But
right?
if you take this with you and go see the director and see what would work for any one of these locations.
Okay, that's the. Parks and
Parks and
Rec.
Rec director.
Parks and Rec Director,
Went down
Yep.
to that building.
Kelly Trundle.
The town sent me down there and I about got arrested in the parking lot because there was nobody there and I walked in the door and I guess the silent alarm went off. And the next thing you know,
Door wasn't locked.
I got to meet all of Alton's police department.
Because they forgot to lock the door.
They forgot to lock the door. I'm in there leaving a letter and, you know, next thing you know, I'm being swarmed.
If you have the ability to email, that email I gave you has Kelly's contact information on it.
Okay, yeah.
And you can correspond with her very easily. She's
Right,
very
beautiful.
responsive to that.
I'll make a motion that we waive the fee for, I'm sorry, for, what's the name of this?
Well,
Where are
Daniel,
you?
Daniel Silver.
For Daniel, I
nonprofit
make a
request.
motion that we approve the Daniel Silva request to waive the fee and let him coordinate with the Parks and Rec director as to dates and times available for town building.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
Okay.
Dan.
You
So
gentlemen.
just get in touch with her and,
Yeah,
and try the door, and if it's unlocked and nobody's there, don't go in.
I'm going in.
This is yours.
No, I'd give it to
Oh,
Mike.
okay.
Oh, well,
Thank you. Okay, hazardous mitigation plan adoption.
if you recall, at our last meeting, I presented you and explained to you that you're gonna get an electronic copy. We put a copy of the mitigation plan. It's 170 some pages, so we're trying to conserve a little bit. We've had it posted up for the public now, and we've put it out to everybody that we, the community, and in the meetings that we've held for, I think we had a total of 7 meetings with members of the town. Were some community member representatives as well.
Mhm.
We haven't gotten any more feedback, and at this point, there was no edits or changes to the revision. So we're bringing it forward now. We have to formally, it's been accepted by FEMA, but it needs to be formally adopted by the town. And the adoption is just a process of the board voting to adopt it. And then there are a couple signature pages. If you, in that big thick one, there's a full printout copy of it
Mhm.
For the board as well. But unless there's any other comments on the plan or suggestions or whatnot, like I said, it's been posted for a while.
Mhm.
And we don't have any further changes to make or edits. So-
No edits or changes to the mitigation.
Not at this point. We've gone through every section at this point.
Mhm. And how many pages was that?
A lot. There's 100, I can't believe 100. It's, the whole thing's right there.
Yeah,
Big
I
thick
see
one.
it. I see it. I see it.
I'll make a motion that we accept the hazardous mitigation plan.
That we adopt it.
Adopt.
That we adopt.
Yep, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And there will just be signature pages that Stacy has nicely color coded so that we
Get all the proper signatures.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, Cemetery Department Rules Amendment.
Last official action.
Last official.
You end up in the cemetery, right? That's it.
That's right. Yeah, it has to be the cemetery.
So if we call you from here now on, it's gonna be just to say hi.
Okay, yes, that would be nice. Sure. So you have a memo, that we put together, relative to the cemetery rules. To just update, and they're marked in here as track changes. You can see the areas that were in fact, impacted by these changes. One area is, relative to the hours, that, basically as far as doing burials, which are not affected by additional fees. So during regular operating hours, that we have staff that's readily available, then there's a rate for that. Any times that are outside of that, then there is a additional cost, for interments. The other area in here is relative to, decorations and plantings. We're trying to get folks to, refrain from, planting flowers actually in the ground. Trying to encourage them to use either, cement or, stone type pots. In order to do that, it just makes maintenance a lot easier as far as weed whacking. Nobody wants to damage anybody's plants, and, I can tell you that, sometimes when we've been short-staffed and or have, had some high, grass growth, it has impacted. And certainly we don't want to, folks plant that for their loved ones, have
Right.
a lot of sincere feelings about that, certainly don't want to do that. We're trying to encourage folks to use some form of a, receptacle in order to do
Right.
that, not plastic, but something that can be sturdy and, can be weather, ability that way. And also encourage people to clean them out at the end of the season and or potentially even remove them, and take them in for the winter, that way. As
And
you
the change that you have on there, is to be like 12 inches from the base of this, the
So,
stone.
Yeah, the
And
stake,
not to be anywhere else and then just in front of that.
correct,
And
Yeah.
then they remove it, staff don't remove it.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless they put it in the wrong place, the staff will move.
Right. Yeah, and or if in fact, sometimes, family comes up and they do something and then they leave it and then we end up after a fashion and or at the close of season, end up having to police the area and pick some of those areas up, relative to that. The other change is relative to monuments, just, previously, when there was a full-time sexton that was there, they were doing their own monuments, their own foundations, losing money to beat the band. So we have, now we do not do foundations. That is now part of the monument company's responsibility to do that. We do have oversight for that, just as far as the checks and balances. My experience has been over the 12 years of being involved in public works and in cemeteries, these monument companies, the ones that are reputable, have in fact, they know how to put in a foundation, because it's their stone that they do not want to have topple over, due to freeze and thaw. So they're usually pretty good about that. The other thing was to just clarify sizes relative to, some of the stones. It had not been called out very clearly, in previous document. So we did, find a document where there was a short form, that had the sizes in it, but it was not in the overall main set of rules. So we have incorporated that in there as well. The other item that was added, was relative to burial fees, charged for infants that are under the age of 1 year old. So there had been apparently some early discussions prior to me coming here, from the, sexton, Jim Anderson at the time, that, in the past that had been waived. for those type of internments. Classically, I've seen that throughout, and talking to the Cemetery Association, that is pretty much a given rule of thumb that there is a waiver that's always been issued relative to that. So there is a larger version, and then there is what we call the condensed version. So we've tried to align those. I'll be honest with you, most folks that end up dealing with anything at the cemetery go to the condensed version. So we have tried to call that out and kind of call out the things that are, you know, really the hot button items that way. So my recollection was when we did some fee changes back in, I think it was 2022. When we made some substantial fee changes to update those 2022 and 2023 for those changes. That the board as trustees just went ahead and took that action. They did not, my recollection was, and once again, sometimes my recollection isn't as precise as it used to be, is relative that there was not that you didn't have to go through a public hearing process, but, or do public input, but certainly, you know, that's deferred to your judgment relative to that. These are relatively minor operational type items.
Right.
And once again, I think the only, you know, thing is, we're just trying to encourage people to try to, not do as much plantings. I can tell you that in the past where there's been shrubs that were planted, bushes, that now the staff has had to, because family, has not been back to maintain, that the staff ends up having to either remove them. Anything that grows with roots in the cemetery is not good. So we try to keep any of those plantings out in common areas that are not in burial areas.
Okay.
So I'm clear, the monument size limitations that are listed here existed in some other document somewhere, and it's just being incorporated now into a single document.
That's what we found. yeah.
Okay. And the restrictions on the plantings that, you know, that you cannot actually plant a real live plant, has that always kind of been out there, or is that just common?
No, I mean,
sense?
there is a fair amount of in-ground planting that has occurred. And there are some people that do, you know, do due diligence and keeping up with them and maintaining them very well. But moving forward, we're trying to encourage, because sometimes you don't always get that same type of follow through, that it does cause a hardship. And some people like to plant things that are that come back every year, as far as being those, what they call them, perennials there. I'm not a flower person, but.
Well, you
yeah,
got that right.
In that.
You got it right.
In that situation there. So, that it just becomes more of a maintenance, time, issue.
Yeah.
So a lot of cemeteries are trying to work, away from that, and or have people stretch that a little bit and try to put in some kind of a bush, which is a flowering plant of sod, versus it, you know, being a hedge, which is hedges down there. We had to remove some, and, you know, I've taken some awful licks over my years in public works, and it's generally been in the cemeteries when we've removed something that somebody planted
Oh, yeah.
in memory. And that is, you know, and it's not something that we do, you know, just because, you know, to do it. It's because it becomes an issue that somebody else's stone is being encroached upon, or it becomes an issue where the root system is being disruptive, or it's in really bad shape. Some of those, you know, have grown around the stones and they're all brown, and, you know, I mean, it's just, it doesn't look well. And we're not manicurists, relative to bushes and shrubs and hedges, so.
Keep it as simple as possible.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. And keep it presentable. I mean, when the cemeteries are mowed up and looking top quality, they really do look very nice that way. It's been very difficult over the years to standardize, and keep things uniform if you go and visit other cemeteries. you can see when there's no rules and things get a little bit rogue that way, but trying to standardize them certainly makes it a lot simpler and a lot easier to maintain.
Okay,
Great, thanks.
all right. I'd make a motion, right now to the cemetery, let's see. To, adopt the proposed changes, to the cemetery rules effective, June 25th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll miss
And-
the whole speeches.
What's that?
We'll miss all the whole speeches.
You miss some speech?
Yeah, you know.
Ryan will take up the slack.
Yeah.
It's a police chief
It's,
thing.
yeah, must be.
We like to
Okay.
talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you
bet.
both.
Thank
You have a good night. Thank you. Okay, Water Bandstand Committee Water Ski Show request. The request would be to temporarily between 2 and 4 close down the public ramp in the bay next to Shibley's. To also have 2 dedicated docks closest to Shibley's by the pier. 2 finger docks available for the ski show people and their staff and their boats. So there'd be 2 of those, the closure of the ramp, again, from 2 to 4. And to also close off spaces of parking in front of the community center. Approximately 5 spaces for trailers and vehicles. And in front of both sides, up to 3 spaces on either side of the boat ramp for the event itself. So I wanted to present that, so which is going to be God, I don't have that here with me. August 24th. Yes, I was gonna say the 25th.
It's the 24th.
August 24th, isn't it? Or the actual date? Either way, it's the closure of those spaces for the ski show specifically. I should have had it written. Yes. That's the 24th. It should be the 24th. I was gonna say the 25th, but it's the 24th. It's a Saturday, the 24th, and it'll be from, again, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 2-hour closure for the ski show. And that's it. I'll
make a motion
okay.
that we approve the water ski show request for August 24th. 2024 to everything that Paul had mentioned about the closing down of the spaces.
From 2 to 4.
From 2 to 4, the boat ramp.
As proposed.
As proposed. There we go.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. Selectmen reports. Drew.
I got nothing. I had Richard cover for me at the milfoil meeting.
There you go.
And I signed Drew up as the new chairman of the Milfoil Committee. No, we did have a milfoil meeting on 6/17. I didn't even know what milfoil was. I thought it was a sandwich wrap, but I learned quite a bit and I was very impressed with the organization and the approach. And they approved the proposed budget for this year in terms of what funds would be used. And shortly thereafter, we got word from the state surveyor indicating that milfoil in the Merrymaking River, which is usually a major expense, is almost non-existent this year. And so that's going to leave us with some savings that we can either apply next year or use this year if some other area proves to be more difficult than is currently projected. We also had our hazardous waste meeting in the morning of the same day. And that went well. There were no issues, and that is proceeding with the normal summer schedule.
Thank you.
I have nothing.
Okay.
The planning board had its meeting, got a couple things taken care of over there, which was nice. The master plan committee, I believe I just got an email today about it. We're setting that up to get going.
Okay. Very good. I have very little other, most of it's already in public, knowledge. We've, had the ZBA had its meeting on a Thursday evening. And it was a strictly a special exception that was denied. Another applicant withdrew their application. So since then, there was a special meeting with council and public to go over procedure and regulations. We also had a special meeting, public present with no public input on a decision to rescind the decision of the board for a denial for a special exception. And that was reversed, and we voted on that tonight to absorb the cost for them to reapply for an application if they choose to do so. And basically, that's all I have for now. Okay, we'll go right to administrator report.
I only have one thing tonight, just an update. So yes, one thing, Andy. I had a meeting with, the Parks and Rec director, the chairman of the Rec Commission, and members of the Friends of Parks and Rec organization, sort of a tail end discussion, about some of the fundraising that they're looking to do, to put specifically toward, playground improvements. They have some bigger projects on the horizon that they're looking at and trying to put together. The meeting I had with them is there was some discussion that, about the whole idea of, the commission touched on it a little bit about paying electronically, but also with donations, where those were gonna come in, whether they would come directly to the town or whatnot. I did, talk in length with them about, and I think that the direction they decided to go is to form a 501(c), a nonprofit themselves. They were looking at, I explained to them, some of the legalities about taking in donations, especially over $10,000. That a public hearing would have to occur every single time. The board would have to in order to accept it. And some of the size of the projects were nearing somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 they were talking. The intent is that they're going to, and they wanted me to, make sure the board was aware of their efforts and what they're doing, but encourage them to pursue the 501(c), get established as the nonprofit. They take in their donations through there. And then when they have a collective project, that would be the best and most efficient time to come to the board with the funds, with a proposed project, so it could be accepted and as unanticipated income and support for the project at that time. Doing it sporadically as donations come in, I think would be very difficult, plus it would probably it would turn off a lot of big donors, because most people don't want to have a public hearing for a large donation where we don't have the ability to hold donors anonymously in a public hearing. So, so that meeting went very well, and that's the direction they're going to pursue. And they were hoping, I did reassure them that I would bring it up at the next board meeting, just so, like you said, you're aware of their efforts. If you hear something around town, that they are going to be soliciting donations on behalf of Friends of Parks and Rec for a later proposal to the board at that time.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Approval of the minutes.
We don't have any minutes.
Okay, there was no minutes, okay. I didn't see any, and I was gonna ask. Consent agenda approval.
I make a motion that we approve the June 25th, 2024 consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No request for appointments.
Nope.
Public input on any items? Okay, seeing no one here, close the public input. No non-public tonight? Okay, we got the big question.
Go for it. Go ahead. You know you wanna.
I do.
What?
I know, forget it.
You wanna make?
I make a motion.
I make a
to
motion,
adjourn?
make a motion, we
There we
adjourn.
go. I'll second it.
Okay.
All right, we're good.
Yeah, it caught me off guard.
All right. He froze.
All in favor?
Sugar's low.
Aye.
Aye.
I did.
His sugar is low.
I said, I think your sugar's low. That was a Ryan.